Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. We're looking at a custom build that is blue screening intermittently today. So this is going to be a fairly dry diagnostics session. Now the eagle-eyed ones among you, if you're all reckoned back, will recall that this is the stealth bomber build we did just before Christmas. It actually had problems earlier in the year, just after, like in January, where the client called me and said, oh, they were getting the odd blue screen here and there. And I said, okay, reset BIOS to kill the overclock and see how you get on. They did that, didn't hear back, so it seemed fine. Then they got back to me again recently and said that it had slowly been sort of doing it very intermittently again, and it's been steadily getting worse even without the overclock. So it looks like we have sort of a progressive intermittent fault that initially the overclock was exasperating, and now without the overclock it's just slowly getting worse anyway. So I'm just doing a quick visual inspection on the inside just to make sure that there's nothing hilariously wrong with it. I'm not expecting to see anything here, but I'm just looking for cables out of place. I'm looking for just anything that might be obviously wrong. I mean, if there was a major visible fault, then probably it's not going to be starting. But we always do a visual inspection because if I spot a burn mark on the motherboard or something like that, then we know where we're starting from there. So yeah, this looks okay to me. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything here. And because I put it together, I know that it's built right. I know that everything's in the right place. So we're fine. Okay, so let's get this thing into a testing setup. Because we're not working on hardware, we're going to drop it down the side of the counter for now, and we'll start doing some tests. Oh, hey, look at that, it blue screened. I was just turning it on. I wasn't expecting it to do anything while I started it up. I was going to turn it on and make sure there was no customer data visible and stuff like that. However, it just blue screened, and I just went, oh, record. So there's our blue screen. Okay, so I'm just going to stop and review that footage just to see what that blue screen was, and it's done it again. Wow, okay, well, there's our reproduction. I thought we were going to have to spend the next 2 hours reproducing the problem. Fine, okay. Okay, so what the hell was that blue screen then? It was we're uncorrectable error, Windows 10. What do we get? Microsoft, that looks promising. Tom's Hardware, that looks promising. Don't like the look of any of those. Reddit, that might have something. Let's start with these. Okay, so shutdown, blah blah blah. Updates. Wow, okay, that's worthless. It means it's a hardware. Fine. Okay, let's see what Tom's Hardware says. No, I don't want notifications. No. Right. Blah, 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 blah. Use blue screen. Oh, Nursoft. Yeah, okay, maybe. However, not really terribly helpful. Reset the BIOS or update it. Maybe. You're not getting anything particularly interesting. We do have a water cooler. Overheating CPU. No, the system's cold. That's not it. Okay, so we've got. So from that, I got try a BIOS update and also disconnect any unnecessary devices. Because we do have the water. No, the water cooler isn't an eye. It doesn't have a USB interface. No. What else have we got? Blah 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 blah. Remove overclock. Remove overclock. We should probably check that the overclock is actually switched off. Delete Windows updates. Turn off Windows updates until you can ID which update is causing the problem. Security update. That looks promising. Okay, so we're going to reset the BIOS to defaults. We'll hold fire on the BIOS update yet because the BIOS update usually resets your BIOS to the defaults anyway. So that seems like a bit of a red herring. Resetting the BIOS to the defaults itself looks like that's what would fix it. So we're going to go with that. and we're going to clear the Windows Update cache and see if that gets us anywhere. Right, okay, let's head back to the computer. Okay, let's start with the BIOS reset. So let's turn the system on, and I'm going to spam the delete key. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick look around for any obvious issues. Let's just make sure that we're all on automatic here. Yeah, that's fine. Fine. There's no overclocks that I'm seeing here. That's all automatic or stock. Yeah, there's nothing to see here. I think let's do a reset just for good measure. So let's head back to there. No, let me see. Easy mode, settings, there we go, save and exit, and restore defaults, save changes. Yeah, the BIOS was at the defaults anyway. Load optimized defaults. Yeah, we haven't changed anything. Let's try that for good measure, and then we'll also see if Windows gives us recovery boot. See if that does anything. Okay, I've let this cycle round a couple of times and it's not going into Windows recovery either, so that's getting us nowhere. So let's pause this because it's getting painful. Or go into, there we go, we've got setup, that'll do. And I'm going to grab my Windows 10 boot drive, which is currently in another system that I'm working on at the same time as this one. Okay, so we're going to boot into a recovery environment, and that's going to allow us to get, let's get out of this, we don't need this. What's going to be the root menu? Let's try F12, because F12 is the usual. F11. I think I missed that. Yeah, I did. Machine check exception. Okay, that's a new one. Let's hold fire on that. That might just be confused because I'm spamming F keys at the moment. Let's just hit reboot. And we're just going to spam F11 for the boot menu. Okay, UEFI, Kingston Data Traveler, go! Right, so this is going to take us into the Windows setup, and from the Windows setup we can get to a recovery environment. Ah, that's fun. Now, was it really booting from the flash drive, or did I just mess up the boot? I'm just going to interrupt setup. What I'm tempted to do is disconnect the built-in drive just so I can test. Because if this blue screen error is happening with the main system drive disconnected, we've immediately wiped out any possibility that this is a software issue. So let's just quickly do that. So power off. Okay, right. The SSD and the hard drive are both disconnected now. So there's only one place it can boot from, and that is the Windows 10 flash drive. So I'm just going to let it run through its normal startup, and let's see what it does. Okay, let's just try forcing boot menu, because it doesn't... It's not a happy chappy, this computer. This is really not a happy chappy. Okay, there we go. It's loading something. Let's see what... Okay, yeah. Right. Yeah, this is clearly a hardware fault. Right, okay. So based on what we were seeing on our research when we were Google searching this problem, there are a lot of people saying, oh, this is the CPU stopping and so on and so forth. So what we seem to have here is some kind of critical hardware interrupt, which is causing the CPU to go, no. Right, so let's turn it off. Let's back up and let's try something else. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to run a memory test on it, because memory test will tell me more information. It will tell me what else we can find. It's quite possible that Mem Test is just not going to run if the computer is this upset. But Mem Test is a really good way of gathering new information. So I need to find my Mem Test drive. Okay, so we've got some writing in the top left of the screen that's being covered by my face. Let's move over here. Alright, so we're in Mem Test. I'm just going to let that automatically start. Let's see what happens. Well, that hasn't fallen over right away. Let's leave this to run and see what it does. Yeah, let's let this run. Okay, right, I've come back sometime later. This has been left running for just over an hour. It's into the second pass and it's found nothing. So this is a dead end. It's not memory. So what this does tell me is that it's not memory. The RAM modules are working properly, the CPU memory controller is working properly, and the motherboard is vaguely working properly, because those are the three components that could cause errors to appear in a Mem test. Now, again, passing a Mem test doesn't mean that our motherboard and CPU are definitely not at fault here, but it's a good indicator that they're vaguely working, or at least the CPU anyway. Motherboards can still be causing issues despite the fact that you can get through Mem test, but again, what we're doing here is just gathering information. That much being said, because we've still got no errors, we don't really have any useful information yet. We're not really any the wiser than we were before, although considering the previous test we ran, we couldn't even boot from a Windows 10 flash drive. This is showing that the system isn't completely bugged, at least. So, what's next? Well, next, because we're getting nowhere, I'm going to start going really broad scan now. We're going to start taking hardware out and see if we can boot from that Windows 10 flash drive because, you know, we've got reproduction of the problem. Let's start pulling stuff out of the system until it boots again. So, let's power off. Right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the graphics card first of all, because that is a big honking piece of equipment that is always the first thing to cause major issues if there's a problem. So, beast of a graphics card. What is this, a 1070? Yes. Looks in great condition. Man, I want one of these in my computer. This is a lovely graphics card. Looks gorgeous. Anyway, right. Okay, so we've pulled the graphics card. Now this is a Skylake rig, so pretty much all Skylake motherboards have got onboard onboard video outputs, so either HDMI or DVI or something. So we've just plugged straight into the onboard output. If you don't have onboard video output, then you will have to get a bit creative, and you will need to find some other means. You may need to plug in a tester graphics card or something like that. Now, obviously, if you're doing this at home, you may not have graphics cards just lying around. So, I don't know, you're going to have to borrow one or something like that. However, thankfully, we've got on board. So, we're going to go UEFI, Kingston Data Traveler. Let's see if it starts for us with the onboard graphics. Nice. All right, so it's not our no, it's not our graphics card. I was about to say it might be graphics card drivers, but we're not booting from the SSD, we're booting from a Windows flash drive. Now, because that Windows flash drive has the stock Windows install on it, there is no way that this is a software issue. We're still looking at hardware here. Can I interrupt that before it tries to boot again? No, I can't. Okay, so the good news is that this lovely graphics card doesn't have to be sent back. The bad news is we're still none the wiser. So what are we going to do now? It's not the RAM, because there's no way that RAM will get through Mem Test and still be faulty. It's not the graphics card, so we're kind of down to like, you know, CPU, motherboard, that kind of area now. I'm going to put this thing back up on the bench and have another look inside and see what else we've got in there that might be causing us issues. Let's see what else we can take out. Alright, so let's move those to one side. So we've got no graphics card in here now. The drives are disconnected. There's no USB devices connected. It's just ports because this is a H55 or something like that. Doesn't have Corsair Link on it. So I can't see anything that would be causing problems. However, let's go for the bare boot just in case, because right now I got nothing at the moment. I got nothing at all. So we're going to disconnect front USB. We're going to disconnect all the fans. CPU can stay. Okay, then that's serial ATA, front USB 2, another system fan, and the front audio jacks disconnected. Again, I very much doubt that any of those are causing us problems, but bare boot is a bare boot. So we're down to just the motherboard, the RAM, and the CPU. That's all we've got in here now. That's all that is connected, and the power to those things. We've got the front panel buttons still connected. However, front panel buttons are not going to cause this kind of issue. That's not going to be it. You know, that's like changing the tyres on a car because the engine won't start kind of thing. It's not going to be those. Right. So let's power this thing back on again and see if we have any change. No. Okay. Well, at least reproduction is easy. I thought this video was going to be about half an hour of trying to make it blue screen before we actually started fixing it. Okay, right. I'm going to reseat the CPU because reasons. Sometimes just taking out the CPU and putting it back in again will solve the issue. Maybe there's a bent pin under there. Maybe there's a speck of dust under there. That's all something that could cause these kinds of issues. So let's get on with that. Right, what about our CPU? Let's very carefully hook this fella out. Alright, so the bottom of our CPU looks fine. There's no visible issues with that. And our CPU socket, the LGA, looks fine. I'm doing my ducking and weaving technique that you've seen me do before, which is how I spot bent pins. And if I move the camera about so the light catches the LGA, you can see that the two halves of it are uniform. There's no spots sticking out, except for there. What's that? Oh no, that's a bit of plastic that sits in. That's not actually a pin. It looked like pins on the screen for a moment. No, there's nothing to see here. So what we're going to do, we're going to redo this thermal paste. We're going to start it up again, and we're going to see if we've got any change, which I don't think we're going to, but whatever. A beautiful clean CPU. Drop that into the socket. Just move it around to make sure it's seated happily. And we'll clean up the CPU cooler while we're here as well. Although I'm probably going to stick my test cooler on it just to make life a bit easier for myself. Arctic freezer, on you go. We're not going to plug this in, we're just going to perch it on top just so that CPU isn't at risk of just burning out immediately. Just going to find a good orientation so it sits nicely. There we go, that'll do, that's all we need. That lot can stay out the way, that's all disconnected. We will plug in the CPU fan actually just so it doesn't complain. And it's also a good indicator so we know when it's turned on and all the rest of it. Okay, I'm not expecting this to be any different, but let's try it. No. Okay. Power off. Right, so reseating the CPU hasn't helped us there. The CPU cooler is disconnected. We've got a different cooling system on it. We're down to CPU or motherboard, really. I would be happier if we could test some different memory in it. I know the memory has gotten through Mem Test, but sometimes changing components out is the only true test, as far as I'm concerned. Diagnostic tests and stuff like that is just an indicator. Let's drop out the memory modules and test them individually. This is a complete grasping at straws shot in the dark, but I would be remiss in my duty if I did not try changing the memory configuration, because certainly you guys have seen my diagnostics in the past where I forgot to check the memory and it turned out to be the memory. So, whatever. Wah, wah, wah. For a moment, I thought that was gonna work. All right, other one next. Nope. Okay, one more test. I'm going to try the memory module in a different slot, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Some motherboards are really picky about what slots you run the memory in, and some of them will let it pass. There is the optimum configuration, which is what we're using at the moment. However, let's just try moving up to slot 1 and see if it will boot for me. My cooler is in the way, it's coming out. No. It's not the memory. It's not going to be the memory. It's curious that we can get all the way through a Mem test, but we can't boot into a Windows recovery environment. Now, this is the point where we really need a different CPU. But I don't have Skylake CPUs lying around. And my test rig is Broadwell. I think we're going to try a BIOS update, which I don't think is going to work. However, I'm just trying to think of what else I can do with the equipment I have available to me. And a BIOS update, it might just shake things about. And I tell you what I'm going to do while I look up the BIOS for this thing. We're just going to drop the RTC battery out to reset the BIOS. And that is also a total shot in the dark. However, it's another free test we can do while we're waiting. So, can I move this Corsair water cooler? No, the fan was hanging on, that was why. Fine, that's staying over there for now. Let's get the memory back into that configuration. We'll leave one module out at the moment just to keep everything simple. And we'll drop you back in place. And we're going to pop the battery out. Okay, right, and while that sits in the bad corner to think about what it's done, let's see if we can find a BIOS of this thing. So what is this? This is a Z170A Gaming Pro Carbon. To the desktop. Good job. Okay. Service. Motherboards. Download a manual. What's this, 1155? Have I actually gone insane? Z170, good grief. Gaming Pro Carbon. Downloads. We want the BIOS. Lots of compatibility updates. They do quite a lot of work on this board actually. There's been steady BIOS updates. Patched Ghost problem. Updated CPU microcode. I like the look of all of that. You never know, we might just get a fix out of this. Right, download. Okay, and that gives us a single file, so we'll copy this to a flash drive. Copy. Okay, right. So firstly, we're going to pop that back in, and we're going to do our control test to make sure that we've still got the same issue. So power on, power on. All right, we had a really long post there. Alt F1, no, right, F1, F2 to continue. Yep, that's fine. Okay, and it's power cycling. See, we did restore the BIOS to the defaults, but sometimes the only true reset on a BIOS is just literally just take the battery out. Don't use the jumper, don't press the button, just take the battery out and leave it for 5 minutes. Sometimes that's the only way of being absolutely certain. Of course, that's assuming this makes any difference whatsoever, which it probably won't. No, of course it didn't. Alright. Power off. Flash drive in. Let's unplug the Windows 1 just so we don't confuse anything. Power on. And we're going to spam delete for setup. Okay, so how do I... Oh, I don't have a mouse. Okay, I guess we're doing it with... we're going to keyboard warrior this. Right, so mflash. System will auto reboot and enter flash mode. Sure, do it. Alright, so yep, SanDisk, there's our file. And we've currently got version 1.4, we're going up to 1.8. So we're going up by exactly a year in BIOS updates. So let's see if this does anything at all. That's a pretty update. I kind of prefer it where they give you the blocks that go along and you can see it doing the thing, but a progress bar is okay with me. As long as there's some indicator that it's doing something. What I hate is when you get screens that just say, please wait, and you're like, okay, can I have a spinner, a progress bar, just something that lets me know that it's doing something? Something else has just occurred to me. Is that we haven't tried booting from the Windows flash drive in a different USB port. We currently have the flash drive plugged into USB 3 ports, and I haven't tried moving it to a USB 2 port. So we're going to do that next if we don't get anywhere. I really don't think that's going to be it either, but just another thing to try. Right, it's done an auto restart, and we're not going to touch anything, we're just going to wait and see what it does. It will probably drop into BIOS setup because there's nothing to boot from. Okay, right, that's fine. No boot device. So we're going to 3-finger salute. And we're going to spam delete to enter setup. Okay, so firstly, in the top right behind my face, we can see that we are running BIOS version 1.8. So we've confirmed that the build update was successful. So that's fine. So what we'll do now is we'll plug our Windows flash drive back in and see if we've got any change. I'm going to put it back in the USB 3 ports just to keep the same consistent testing. And if this doesn't work, then we'll move it to the USB 2 port. Right, reset. And we're going to F11 for boot menu. No. Okay. Power off. Moving the flash drive to a USB 2 port. No. That makes me feel slightly better. I would have been tearing my hair out if that had made a difference. Alright, so we are still nowhere. We are literally nowhere. Okay, what else? Right, so let's summarize how far we've got. We have narrowed it down. It's not a memory fault. It's not a graphics card fault. It's not a peripheral because there's nothing connected. It's nothing to do with the BIOS because we have both reset the BIOS and we've updated it. It's not to do with the boot source because we have got a known good Windows 10 flash drive connected and we're not booting from any drives. So we have pretty much narrowed it down to CPU or the motherboard. We have removed the CPU and done a visual inspection. We also know from past experience and from other projects that it's never the CPU. So at this point, it looks like we've got a faulty motherboard to me. So what we need is a replacement MOBO. Where are we going to find one of those? Tell you what I almost forgot. Power supply. Right, we need it over here. Whoops, we should probably not have the heatsink laying down on the motherboard when we turn it on. Cool. Ah, Hail Mary! Machine check exception. Huh. Well, that's different. Let's let it reboot and see if it comes up with the same one again. Yeah, we're back to the same one. That machine check exception, I think we saw that pop up a while back, but I didn't pay much attention. I'm gonna head back to Google and just see if that leads me anywhere interesting. Again, I'm not sure it will, but you never know. Let's quickly check into that. No, just no. Man, Tom's Hardware is all about the Oculus right now. This is a driver issue again, chipset. Although interestingly, this is referring specifically to the chipset. So again, this leads us to believe that this is going to be a motherboard issue rather than a CPU issue, which tallies with my normal mantra of it's never the CPU. I don't understand much of this because I'm not a computer scientist. Oh, look at this, has been replaced with we're uncorrectable error. So, okay, it's the same thing. So yeah, however, obviously machine check exception is an older version of this and must apply to a lower level point of Windows, because that machine check exception blue screen came up really early on, and then later on after the reboot it got a bit further and then went to uncorrectable error. So okay, so it's the same deal. However, this has led us to believe that it's a chipset issue, which brings us back to motherboard again. So yeah, bottom line is I think we've got a bad motherboard. Okay, so at this point, I am 99% certain that we have a dead motherboard here. However, we're going to need a spare one to prove it conclusively. There's no other way at this point without changing the CPU or the motherboard. Now, because we're going to be changing the motherboard, I'm going to take this one out of the case. And that's going to do two things for us. Firstly, it means that when the new motherboard shows up, we can just drop it in. And secondly, it also means that I can test the motherboard to see how it behaves outside of the case. Now, normally, if there is a short circuit or something to do with the mounting of the motherboard causing a problem, I would expect the system not to post. However, you never know. So let's take this thing out and we'll boot it bare on the bench and just double check that it's still giving us the same issues. Okay, let's do our control test. So we're going to plug in some power and some boot and just make sure this still doesn't start up. Firstly, I'm just going to quickly check the back of the board, check for any obvious issues there. No, there are no obvious issues on the back. Okay, right, we have our test set up. Let's power this thing on. I need some tweezers. and we're going to short the power jumper, which is down here somewhere. Power switch is there. And our survey says... And now we've got the machine check exception straight away. We'll wait for it to go around one more time just to make sure we get the other one. However, I very much doubt it's going to work if we've gone straight to that first blue screen. No. Okay, new motherboard. We're done. I'll see you guys after the cut. Alright, we're back, and I couldn't get hold of another Z110 board, so I had to just buy another motherboard. And because I'm not 100% certain we've got a failed one yet, I didn't want to splash out on a brand new Z170. So we've got a little H110M board here. So this is a cheap little board. However, these little things are great. You know, this is perfect for like an office build or something like that. So I'll probably use it in something else at some point. In the meantime, we can now drop the CPU from this computer into this board, and we can check if we get the same issue. If this one gives us those same blue screen errors, we know we've got a faulty CPU. So yeah, it kind of sucks. I had to invest money in spare parts on this one because yeah, this cost is on me now. However, sometimes the only way to find out is just to get replacement parts. Now, if you've got them lying around, then that's great, but I just don't happen to have a Z170 board lying around. So let's get the rest of the test rig set up. That's depressing. That's the only thing wrong with this motherboard. It doesn't have HDMI on it. It's VGA instead. So, won't buy one of these again. Whatever. Right, now I have to set my monitor to analog, which means I can't capture. Okay, we are good to go. So let's give it some power. Power on at the back. And we're going to go boop. And we seem to have no post. Nothing at all. Okay, let's turn it off and check our setup. Let's pop you off. The CPU is warm. That should be okay. We've got power to the CPU. We've got power to the motherboard. We have CPU fan. Let's try moving the RAM to the other slot in case it's fussy. We're currently in slot 1, but you know, some boards are like, no, you have to do slot 2 first, because I don't know why. So let's try that. We don't have a CMOS clear jumper in place. And we've got a boot source, and we've got VGA. Alright, let's try that again. I'm a little bit concerned that there was no heat on the bottom of that. I'm just going to put a little smidge of thermal paste just to make sure we don't melt the CPU, which would be a little bit inconvenient right now. You're normally okay just running these things bare, but I'm a little bit worried that the CPU was warm but the heatsink wasn't, so I'm just going to make sure it's got a little bit of cooling there. Alright, I think we're good to try again. So, power on at the power supply, and start. Okay, monitor's coming on. Oh, there we go, we got post. Right, let's see if it'll boot up. So it was probably the memory in the wrong place that was upsetting it then. So now the acid test is, will it boot into Windows setup? It doesn't seem to be doing much of anything at the moment. Where's my keyboard? Let's get a boot menu. Can we boot menu? Boot menu, boot menu. No. Okay, let's reset it and try it again. Yeah, I'm going to spam F12 for a boot menu. I'm not feeling that either. Can we system information for F9? No. Alright, I'm going to reset again. I'm going to see if I can get BIOS set up. So we're going for the delete spam. Nothing there either. And after waiting for a while, we've actually gotten into the BIOS. Is it detecting stuff properly? Yeah, okay, that seems to be okay. Let's boot override onto Kingston Data Traveler and see if we get anywhere. Did just decide to reboot. Okay, for some reason or other we just seem to have a really long post. So I don't know what that means at the moment. I'm just going to wait and see if it actually boots up or not, because I don't know if the long post is related to our problem. I mean, if we boot up and we still have that blue screen error, I don't care about the long post because we're still blue screening. Whereas if we can actually get into Windows setup without blue screening, then I'm more inclined to investigate that long post to find out what that's all about. So let's wait and see what it does. Okay, and after a very long wait, we're on a no boot device found. So we're going to switch off and move the flash drive. Actually, I'm not going to switch off. I'm just going to move the flash drive to a USB 2 port. There shouldn't be any issue with having my flash drive in a USB 3 port, but just in case, we're going to give it the benefit of the doubt. Okay, there we go. Right, it took a little bit of coaxing and coddling, however we've run into the same issue again. So, it's a dead CPU. I'm going to give that one more cycle, just for absolute conclusive proof. However, it looks like we might have the ultra rare occurrence of a dead CPU. And if I haven't already said it, because it was a while ago that I started recording this one, I'm going to say it again. Dead CPUs are super rare. Super rare. Like, seriously, this is the first genuinely dead CPU I've seen in a very long time. But that seems to be the case here, because we've got a brand new, straight out of the box this morning, motherboard that's giving us exactly the same blue screen errors as the last one. And you know what? Just because I'm that skeptical that it's a dead CPU, I'm going to... no, I'm not going to make a new Windows flash drive, because I literally install Windows from this exact flash drive at least once a day on different computers, and it never gives me problems. It's not my flash drive. This CPU is ballsed. Alright, let's move on to what we're going to do about that. Let's turn all this off. We're done here. Alright, so we're dismantling everything again now. I'm declaring this CPU dead, so we're going to take it out. The customer sourced the parts for this, so they are going to be handling the return. And that is to Amazon, so they shouldn't have much issue with returning this fella. So we'll take that out, we'll pack it up so they can easily send it back, and we will wait for them to come back to us with a shiny new CPU. And then we'll be able to reassemble the computer and we'll be done. So I will see you guys after another cut. Alright, we're back again and we've got a new CPU. We've got an i7 7700K to put in this thing. But that's a Kaby Lake, I hear you cry. Yes, you're absolutely right, and this is indeed a Skylake motherboard, but we did a BIOS update on this while we still had the old CPU in it, which means this thing will now take a Kaby Lake CPU as well. So yeah. The customer took this opportunity to get some dank upgrades. So we've got a new CPU going in. We've also got a new water cooler to go in as well to beef up the cooling with the bigger processor. So let's do a quick control test first of all. We're going to lift this all up, fit this CPU, and just make sure that we get a clean post out of it, because, you know, it should work. Alright, so we've got power, we've got a Windows flash drive, we've got HDMI, we've got mouse and keyboard, we've got cooling, and we've got RAM. So this thing should boot into the Windows setup environment now. Let's fire it up. Aha! Okay, we have post. Ugh. So, CPU memory changed. Yes, it did. We're going to... Oh, okay, I didn't touch it. It's doing something. So let's see what it does. Alright, we've got a Windows loading spinner. That is promising. And we have Windows setup. That is good enough for me. So, we're on for a winner. In that case, we've got a working CPU, a working motherboard. Let's put this thing back together again. Okay, right. This Corsair H55, I think it is. Water cooler is coming out. And we've got a NZXT Kraken X61 going in, which we picked up on the cheap. So this is a 240ml water cooler. It's essentially Kraken's equivalent to the H100i. So nice big 240ml rad. It's not quite as good looking as the Corsair. However, I'm interested to see how well these things perform, because I've been wanting to take a look at NZXT's water coolers, because I've got a love-hate relationship with the H100. It's a good water cooler, but the size of the hoses annoys me. So we'll see how this one works. I really want to have a look at the X62, but that's going to have to wait for another day. Although, watch this space, could be seeing one of those in the near future. Right, we're going to have to take the top panel off of this to remove those fans, because we're going to remount those fans on this fella. So, okay, right, out it comes again. Right, I'm hoping these top fans are 120. I've got a feeling they have 140 though. Yeah. Although having said that, am I sure that these are 120? Oh no, I lie. Our new water cooler is actually 280ml. Sweet. Alright, so let's lift these fans. Okay, right, let's just trial fit our rad and just see how that's going to go. This is big. Coming from the front. I think that's going to work the best. Let's do that. Okay, so I think we're going to drop out the top hard drive cage for this. So we've got a whole row of hard drive trays here, one there, and so on. If we take out this top one, it's going to give us more clearance on these hoses. So you guys will get a better view of what I'm doing in a moment. Just this initial fitting, this is kind of the only way I can do it. So bear with me, please. That is a dank radiator. Alright, we are ready for a motherboard to go back in this thing. Have we still got the IO shield? Yes, we do. And let's just put you out the way. And I think we should just be able to drop this back in. Oh, it's a tight fit. Let's try that. And I've just got to hook all the small wires from the bottom around the board again. There we go. And our board is in place. And thankfully, this H440, as you can see, even with the water cooling rad and fans, has still got enough clearance at the top to completely clear the motherboard. So another reason why the NZXT H440 is such a good builder's case. You know, you can just fit the entire world in this thing. It's so good. It's again, this case is not my die-hard favourite for aesthetics. I've got cases that I think that are prettier, but the 440 is just such an amazing builder's case. It's so hard to top. Alright, Right, let's get this thing screwed back into place. Now all these cables are just going to snap back into place because they're already routed from where I originally built this case. So we've just got to plug everything back in. There's very little work to be done here, thankfully. Beautiful. Okay, let's quickly clean up the thermal paste that came off of my testing cooler, and then I think we can fit the cooling head of this NZXT. Okay, so now let's figure out what we're going to do with these hoses. I think I can just push that back into there and just have that come in like that. I tell you what I've forgotten to do. I haven't put the back plate on the motherboard. We've still got the Corsair one on there. So let's back away for a moment. Let's just put that cover back on, and we'd better get that back plate into place. That's problematic. This back plate is glued on with the double-sided pads that come with it. I wonder if the alcohol will just dissolve some of that glue. So this is isopropyl alcohol, sometimes known as 99% rubbing alcohol, and it dissolves glue and stuff like that. But the great thing is because it evaporates, it's not going to damage this circuit board. So we can be nice and liberal with it and clean this up. There we go. It's a little bit fluffy from the kitchen roll, but that'll do. Should have checked that before I went through that much trouble. Spot the difference. I kind of just assumed that the back plates would be different. However, I think the NZXT one and the Corsair one are basically identical. Oh well. I tell you, the hoses on this NZXT may not be as pretty as the Corsair ones, but they are so much easier to work with. That just dropped straight on. Normally Corsair water coolers, you kind of have to like bend and wrangle everything in place, and it feels horrible when you do it. And you need 3 arms with 2 hands to hold the head in place while your remaining hand puts these thumb screws on. But this one, no problem. That was easy as hell. I like it. Right, let's organise these wires. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do with these wires is we're going to take all of them out of the case. So I'm going to thread all of them straight down this gap down here to the back. And yeah, we're going to have to lift up to do this. Okay, right, now the 3-pin power we're going to bring straight back in again to plug into the CPU fan header. There we go. Alright, now around the back we've got the USB monitoring cable. That can just come straight down. Let's be a little bit clever, and if I thread that a bit through there, that's going to pull that cable back and just make sure that doesn't make its way through. And then that, I think, is going to go through there-ish. That should come out somewhere near the USBs at the bottom of the motherboard. Okay, then we've got our 2 fans, which will plug into these headers. And then we've got power, which, have we got any SATAs nearby? Alright, we don't have a spare Serial 80A power connector here at the moment because we don't have an extra chain for these. So what I'll do is, I know the customer has got all the spares for the power supply, so for now I'm going to hook it up with this horrible thing because we have got a spare Molex down there because there's a Molex chain powering this fan bus. So we'll get it connected up with an adapter for now just so we can test everything, and I'll get the customer to bring in their spares box. There we go. Right, that's all connected up. I think we can put this back panel back on now. Alright, so we need to get this hooked up somewhere. Have we got another USB down here? I may have had the front panel connectors hooked up to USB ports. And that, kids, is why we check our work. There we go, that's all hooked up. There we go, we're done. No, we're not done, we need a graphics card. Look and swish. Alright, so we'll just start this up with the cover off, just because I want to see that NZXT thing run and see how it looks. And just sanity check for sparks, flames, and stuff like that. Everything's plugged in. Everything's plugged in the right place. Good. Alright. Power it back. Power it front. Nice. Alright. That thing's looking pretty. I can hear it running. It's a lot more noticeable than the Corsair water coolers. The Corsair water coolers, you'd question whether they're even turned on, but I can feel the liquid flow on those. Interesting. Alright, we're all finished here, so thank you very much for watching, everyone. I will see you all next time. Goodbye for now.